Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney. I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership for TEPSA. Each week, I seek to bring you different guests who have encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and allow them an opportunity to tell pieces of their story in hopes that it inspires you enough to tell some of yours. I am so thrilled to have my special guest and great friend, Andrea Keller, on with me today. Andrea, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
I am so excited too, Todd. I've known you for it seems like forever.
It is.
I'm Andrea Keller. I'm AK Busy Bee on Twitter, and Instagram, and I'm also being the bookends on Instagram for all my library land stuff. But I am a librarian in a middle school, which I never ever thought would happen. Not well. I was always going to be elementary, but now I'm middle school. I'm married to a wonderful classically trained executive chef. We have 3 dogs. We live in Irving, Texas. So yeah, just a little, and I stay busy, and that's why I'm the busy bee. So I don't sit still well.
Well, and Andrea, you and I have been friends since before anybody even knew who Tech Ninja Todd or Todd Nesloney was, back in the day. And so it's been great to kind of stay in touch and see all these wonderful things. But I've always been inspired by you, not only the path and the decisions you've made in your career, but also just in your own outlook on things and just the positivity and a constant encouragement. I mean, you're great at all that, but you're a librarian now, but you weren't always a librarian. So let me go back a little bit further to before you were even an educator. When growing up, did you know education was the thing for you?
Ooh, so I grew up in a very small town. We only had one middle school, one elementary, one middle school, one high school. And I think I was watching the Special Olympics with my parents, and I'm like, I want to be a special education teacher. So my senior year in high school, I was an aide in a classroom for a life classroom, and that's when I knew that I wanted to be a special education teacher. So I went to college at West Texas A&M University, just 5 minutes from my house, and I got my bachelor's, and I became a special education teacher. And so I've taught PPCD, which is preschool program for children with disabilities. I've taught PDD, which is pervasive developmental disorder, and then I taught life K-5, which is learning in a functional environment. So I've kind of been all over the area. I started out in Amarillo, Texas, in River Road ISD. I think I had a total of 4 students at the most one time. But then I moved, when I got married, we moved to Irving because, my husband's a chef. And although Amarillo is fantastic, the culinary is growing in that area. So we moved to the Dallas area, and I started in Irving, and I taught in a school that's real close to me. And then I moved to a school in South Irving, and that's kind of where I've been ever since, is in the South Irving area. And I love it because I'm from a small town. And so where I teach, it's like small town, like everybody knows everybody. And I am all about that. Like I come from it. Like I have some amazing parents. My mom worked for a doctor, and we go to Colorado, and she'd know people that she knew. Now we go to an airport, and I run into at least one person that I knew. So I love that because I love knowing people. I love knowing their stories and what they're doing. So yeah, that's just a little.
I want to talk about your dad here in a minute, so don't let me forget about that. But I love that before seeing the Special Olympics on TV, you said on TV, right?
Yes.
Before seeing it on TV, had you ever had any interest in special education before then? Like, I'm interested in how that was such a catalyst for you, because when we talk about our special education teachers, especially our life, PPCD, all those teachers, it takes a really specially called person to not only feel comfortable in that environment, but to feel so drawn and love on those kids.
So, I think the Special Olympics was and I might have been like 8 or 9 years old. And remember, I lived in the country, so I only had like 5 channels anyway. So it was anyway. But I was also part of a Girl Scout troop. So, because I'm big in Girl Scouts as well. And I just think that I've always been taught by my parents, by the people I surround myself with, that's so important that we all belong and all are contributing members to society, no matter what our abilities or disabilities are.
Right.
I think that's just kind of my thing, is that I want everybody to feel accepted and that somebody believes in them. And that's always been kind of my thing.
I love that so much. You know, as a teacher, my classroom was right next to our life skills classroom at the school that I taught in. And I always would find ways to get our fifth graders involved in the class so that they could see the same thing. Like, just because this kid may look or sound different than you doesn't mean that we need to treat them any differently than the way we treat you. And as a principal, I really learned the ins and outs of, because my campus housed all the PPCD and life skills for the whole district. And so I got to see all kinds of kids from all different kinds of backgrounds and really fall in love with that environment, even though I'd never taught in that environment. It's so funny. My PPCD teacher used to always be like, "Oh, I hate when you come in the room because the kids always behave and they'll listen to you. And I want you to see what they do when you leave." They're like, "That's what I want you to see." And I'm like, I just love coming in and visiting the kids. And so,
Yes.
and I know you probably got tons of stories from being in those environments, but when you think back to your time serving in that environment, what do you think was one of the most impactful things that happened to you?
Ooh, so I will admit firsthand that I am not the best teacher. I try really hard. Um, and we've done a lot of amazing things. I had a set of boys that I'd had for 6 years, and I loved them. We did so many cool things. But I think the most impactful thing that we did as a classroom is we used to have our own news show. We'd put on, like, in Google Slides, we'd talk about what we'd done each day, and we put into Google Slides, and then we record it, and we have a little news show. My kids, we video conferenced. We did a ton of Skype calls with a ton of different people. We met the girl from Kicking It, I think is what it's called. Some Olivia. I have her picture on my board. We did so many different things and then teachers were like, y'all did this? Like, yes. Yeah. We just had to modify and adapt a little bit, and my kids loved it. They loved it, and it got to get them out of the classroom, and even beyond our school too, because we had to connect in video conferences and stuff. But I think that was the most impactful thing, was just realizing that it doesn't matter if they're verbal or nonverbal. Being able to do those things like every other kid was so important to me.
That's one thing I've always been drawn to you about, because that's when I knew you, is when you were still doing that, is that you didn't allow any kind of disability or title or anything attached to those kids to say, "Oh, well, they can't do that because of this. Oh, well, I'm not going to provide this experience." It's like some of the things you did with your students was even more fantastic than things happening in general education classroom with kids that didn't have any excuses on why they couldn't do those things. And so I really have always appreciated that about you, that it goes back to just what you said earlier, is that every kid deserves to have someone who believes in them and that have that chance to be a part of that. And I think that's such a powerful thing, because that's not always commonplace. And so it's nice when you meet someone who says that but actually believes it too. Now, how did that environment and experience lead to you now being a librarian?
Well, so and then just so you know, not all my things were successful either.
Oh, I know that. Trust me.
And our first video conference, I was like, I need a social story for that, because that did not go well. So, but so I loved technology, and I'm like, I loved what I could see, what I saw, and I presented conferences over technology in the multi-ability classroom and digital storytelling, because everybody has a story to tell, and sometimes doing it digitally even allows those verbal and nonverbal kiddos to use it to tell their story. And I realized, like, I really love technology. So you know what? I want to affect even more kids, because I loved my class. Like, I was super attached to them. I'd been with some of them for 6 years. But I realized that I wanted to affect more kiddos. So I went and got my first master's and became an educational technology, and became an instructional technology specialist, because I'm like, yes, I want to affect even more kiddos. And I think I did that for 3 years, and I loved it and I enjoyed it, but it was not quite what I was thinking it was going to be. I still got to work with kids, but not as much as I wanted to. There's just a little different.
Right.
So then all my librarian friends were like, "Hey, Andrea, why aren't you a librarian?" I'm like, no, I want to do this technology stuff. Like, no, Andrea, you need to be a librarian. I'm like, no, I want to be a technology specialist. And then I realized that I need to be a librarian. So I just finished my second master's just a couple of years ago to become a librarian. So that's kind of where I am today. So I can work with even more kiddos in even more spaces.
Well, I've loved following your journey online, and you bring such passion to everything that you do that it's been fun to watch that passion translate now into books in the library space, and again to that whole mindset of there's not going to be an excuse on why I'm not going to do something regardless of what my title is or what resources I have. So, the librarian role, I'm sure, is quite different than a life skills classroom, or quite different than an instructional technology specialist. And so what was something that was really eye-opening to you when you became a librarian?
First of all, being a librarian is the hardest job I've ever had.
I believe it.
And I taught life for 13 years. But I think the most eye-opening was as a librarian, I have the ability I said, I'm a person that I like to work with lots of people. And that's how I've always been. I came from a small town. I like to know everything. I like to be involved in everything. That's how I am. So I think when I stepped into that library and realized, oh my gosh, I get to be involved in whatever I want to. I get to have these crazy ideas and get to implement them. And kids have to come see me, and teachers have to come see me. And I get a chance to work with not only my school community, but like the outside community as well. I think that was like the big, this is where I'm supposed to be. Not saying I always do it right, but I sure as heck try hard.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate to that. We don't always do it right, but we're trying. But you are the only librarian on your campus, and so one thing I've always thought about for that role, kind of like the PE teacher or the art teacher or things like that, you may have a specials team that you're a part of, but you're really the only librarian. So how do you not feel secluded, different, still have that team? How do you keep that feeling alive?
So I am very lucky that I work in a district that does have certified librarians on every campus. I think that's
Wow.
because for kids to really have that literacy skills they need to have those certified librarians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely lucky to be in my district. When I was in elementary school, it was much easier to be part of a team. I wasn't on a specials team, but I kind of just put myself, I was part of the specials team, but not part of the specials team because fixed flex schedule and everything. It wasn't a fixed schedule, it's a flex schedule. But as middle school, it's a lot different because I'm part of the Lagarde team. I'm part of the leadership team. I have this awesome group of instructional specialists that I hang out with. And I'm one of those people, one, I don't sit still very well at all. Two, I don't say no very well. I'm trying to get better because my word this year's priority. But I kind of put myself in lots of situations because that's the kind of person I am. I don't mind going out and meeting people and doing things, even though I'm totally an introvert. I can totally be extroverted when I need to be.
Right.
So I kind of just have created my own space, but I'm lucky that I work with so many amazing people that say either, Keller, I'll see you later, and walk the other way, or hey, Keller's coming down the hallway.
Well, I love that you said too that being a librarian is one of the hardest jobs you've ever had, because I worked closely with several librarians over my time, and there is so much more that goes into that position when you get to know the librarian and the role of the librarian than just somebody sitting behind a desk checking out books. And yes, I will admit there are schools out there where the people running the library do only sit behind the desk and check out books. But when you are a librarian who's passionate about kids and passionate about literature, it is so much more than that. I didn't realize how much work it is just getting the books back on the shelves, period. Like that alone can become a full-time job. So how do you balance it all?
So in elementary school, I had a lot of processes and systems set up because elementary school, you've got lots of kids coming in with 4 or 5 books at a time and getting those shelved. I did have some fifth graders that come and help me shelve. I did have adult volunteers as well, but shelving's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Shelving is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And especially once you get into the numbers, shelving can be very hard. So I had to make sure I had some good processes put in place for whoever might be helping me that day, or know that I'll need to go check that section later, which is fine. When I was in elementary school as well, I worked with our 18+3C program, which is students that had graduated and were getting for the workforce area that were students with disabilities. So I had processes, those were students that were 18 plus that were disabilities, would come in with their their coach, and they would help me as well. In middle school land, I do have a clerk, so that's super helpful. And I also have 8th graders, which we call links. So they get to help me with a lot of that stuff as well. But although I have help, I'm a person too that's going to say, oh, well, that's your job to go shelve books. No, I'm not that kind of person. So when I have a downtime, I shelve books. And I'm not going to lie too, on shelving books, sometimes it's been a really tough day, and shelving books is very organized and can get your mind right again. I'm just saying. But I do try to make sure I've always got my calendar ready, and make sure I've put on my to-do list the things I actually have to get done, so I don't get overwhelmed. And what I've noticed too is that no matter how many times I leave those books on the shelf, like not carded, not shelved yet, they're still there in the morning. So I'm okay with just leaving sometimes.
Well, and what I'd love to give you an opportunity to share, like, what are some of the things that a librarian does that a lot of people may not be aware of if they're not a librarian or they don't get to know their librarian?
So a librarian, of course, we work with I love working with all content all content areas. So I am not a master teacher, but I'm a teacher of lots of little things. Mm-hmm. I work with all content areas to help provide lessons. Librarians also have to always make sure that their collection development is up to date. So they're always weeding or adding or talking to vendors or talking to students, getting what they're reading. And that's one of my hardest things in the middle school is I know a great picture book. I'm learning all the middle school books. But also working with administration to make sure that they see the value of how important it is for these books to get in kids' hands and how important it is for the library to be used more than just a place to come in, check out books, or more than just a space to have a meeting. So it's important to always be advocating. It's like, as a teacher, you're always advocating for your job because you're always want to have the best scores, on testing because it is what it is. But even as a librarian, I still collect data so I can share with my principal and advocate for how important the library is, how many checkouts came in, how many parents we had come in, how many students came in out throughout the day, who's involved in clubs that we have going on. So it's always it's a huge advocacy is what it really is too.
Well, and a person that you and I both really respect and admire is Jennifer Lagarde. And
yes.
She talks about that. I mean, she's brilliant, number one, and she has the best humor and personality out there. But she talks about that too, about really knowing the ins and outs of your library so that when you're standing up for, we need a certified librarian, we need these resources, like you have the data to show, because you don't have the test scores, but you have a lot of other data you can show. And so if there's schools or educators who are watching who don't have a librarian at their school or who don't have those kind of resources, what are some things you would recommend as starting points for them to show the importance? Because you and I both know and believe in the power of a librarian. So what would you say to them?
Of course, sharing articles that like Jennifer's, and I just saw her present last week and she was amazing.
I'm so jealous. I love watching her present.
And I didn't have the guts to go get a selfie with her. That's okay. We'll do it next time.
Yes.
But having those resources ready, like having good journal articles ready to show them, but also just showing your usage of the library. I send to my principal every 6 weeks. I make a picture chart because one, it's super easy, and two, it makes it look good. I send a picture chart of what goes on in the library. So this way it has good data. It's easy to manage. And so my principal understands that, hey, I'm collecting data too. Just like you're collecting data on students and teachers all are collecting data on students, I'm collecting data on students as well.
I love that so much. So what do you love most about being in your job now?
That I get to see every kid, and that I have some of the quietest kids that come in, and I have some of the loudest kids that come in, and I have some of the kids that might need a break from the classroom, and their teacher might need a break as well, that come in as well. I love that the library is a space where everybody can belong, no matter who you are.
I love that. Now, I can't go without asking you, what is a great book you've been reading recently?
Ooh.
I know that's a tough one, I'm sure, but
I know. So this summer I did read Two Can Keep a Secret If One of Us is Dead by Karen McManus. So good.
Oh, yes. I did.
So
Did you read her first one, One of Us is Lying?
I have it because it's always checked out.
Okay, so I read her first book, One of Us is Lying, and I was like totally addicted. And then I didn't love the ending. So when I picked up The Two Can Keep a Secret, I was like, I'm really hoping I like this one. But I was like, even loved it even more. And
The
now
ending
she's
is
writing a
crazy.
sequel to One of Us is
Yes.
Lying. So I'm like, okay, this might be my new favorite author right now because I'm just totally addicted to these like secretive crime type small town stories. It was so good.
It was so good. It was so good. And then my other favorite one I read this summer was Two Dogfish from Night Owl, I believe is what it's called. I have to go look it up. It's a story about, it's all written in email, and it's two girls writing back and forth because their dads have just gotten together, and the dads are sending them to camp to get to know each other better because they live on opposite sides of the country while their dads go overseas. And so it's a whole like kind of like a little romance story, but how these girls find each other and become friends and everything. And
Aw.
it's really good. It's very, very good.
You know, another book you would like is an author I interviewed actually on a Tell Your Story episode, Song for a Whale by Lynn
Oh,
Kelly.
I have that. I have that. I have a huge
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
but that's one of them though. I think that's actually one on my list.
So before I get to my last question, I've gotta allow you a moment to talk about your dad. So I love following you on social media, well, especially when you share a picture of your dad, because every year he gets to represent a certain character that he looks exactly like.
He
So
does.
tell us who that is and kind of where that came from.
So I am the daughter of Santa Claus, the Texas Santa Claus. And actually my mom even dresses up like Mrs. Claus as well. So my dad, when my parents had first gotten married, they would go around and play Santa. And my dad has the beard and everything, and they go around and play Santa. And it kind of waned a little bit, but probably like the last 10 years, he's let his beard grow out more. And he was the original Santa, but not for money, not for anything. He's an amazing, he's a carpenter. Like my dad is amazing. I have some amazing people in my life. That's all I want to say. But he was like the original Santa. And then he started transforming into the Texas Santa. So he has, and actually there's the artist, Jack Sorensen, who is in Amarillo area. He has actually used my dad on cards for Christmas cards and also puzzles and blankets. They've used him as, and he looks fantastic. But he's now a Texas Santa, so he has the hat with the holly in it, and he has like this long trench coat that's red with the fur and everything. He has special the boot. Oh my gosh, I can't think what it's called. The boot, the things that go on the boots.
Spurs?
Yeah, spurs. Oh my goodness gracious. So what he's been doing is he'll come down around Christmas time, and he'll just walk the stockyards, just walk up and down, and he has little saddlebags that are full of candy canes that'll pass out. And so that's all he does. And people will stop for pictures and will take pictures. I'm like his paparazzi person, and they try to pay him. He's like, no, I'm not doing this for money. He's doing this because he wants people to believe. And so my mom and dad, they both walk around and just as Mr. and Mrs. Claus. I love it. I love
I
it.
love it so much too because he is Santa. Like I
Yes.
don't care what anybody says. Every time I see a photo, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's with Santa again, and I just
Yes.
get so jealous. So it's fantastic. Well, Andrea, my question I always love to end the conversations on is if there was one thing you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
To listen and believe in everybody. It doesn't matter what somebody's background is, because especially as educators, life is hard as it is. I mean, life is hard in my own household, I mean, it's life, right?
Right.
We have no idea what these students are, or even the faculty that we work with are going through. So to believe in everybody, give them a chance, and listen to them. Believe is always my word.
I love that. Well, Andrea, I am so thrilled to get to chat with you today and have you share some of your story. So I thank you so much for giving me some of your time because you are brilliant and I adore you. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so fabulous, Todd. I just love you.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want to go and listen to it. I've tried to put it there. So I hope you go on and check those out. I hope this story has inspired and encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because like I tell you every single week, every story matters.